Hey, this is Lou Sloger with 1136 Ministries, and I'm here with Kendall.
Hey, I'm Kendall.
And this is going to be our first episode, and we've entitled it Old Man, Young Man. And we're just going to try to talk about current events, theology, personal experiences, and just try to see, on the one hand, how much we have in common, even though I'm old and even though he's young. We were going to call this short hair, long hair, but because we might have substitute guests, we just thought old man, young man might be a better way to go about it.
And that means I'd have to keep my long hair forever.
That's also true.
So
yeah. So we're just going to talk about life and then see what the differences of perspective might be and then what we have in common. And I believe this. I've been a Christian for like 47 years. And we don't live it out the way that we should, but I firmly believe that as the children of God, we have much more in common than anything that separates us, especially just like age or the color of your skin or things like that. If you've been bought by the blood of Christ, you have more in common with anybody else who's been bought by the blood of Christ than anything that divides us. But I think it's also healthy to have iron sharpen iron, and that's just challenge each other's perspective, whether we're young or old. So let me let Kendall introduce himself, say where he's from, how old he is, and a little bit of his testimony and present day ministry, and we'll go from there.
Sweet. Well, I'm Kendall. I'm the young man. I am a whopping 25 years old.
When's your birthday?
April 9th, 2000.
All right, so you just turned 20. There you go. Yeah. All right.
It's been a few months.
So are you a Zer? Is that what you guys are called?
Gen Z, baby.
All right.
Yeah, or if you're Australian, Gen Z.
We won't have to worry about that.
Okay, well, just in case, man.
All right.
Yeah, 25. So I've got it all figured out. No kids. Married.
For how long?
3 years.
All right.
Isn't that nuts? I feel.
I'll drink to that.
It feels like a lot longer than 3 years, but it also feels like 6 months. You probably get it.
That's life.
Yep.
Your wife's name is?
Huh?
Your wife's name?
Sierra.
All right.
Yep.
Where'd you guys meet?
We met at a college ministry in San Diego.
That's where you're from?
Yeah, San Diego, man. So I was born and raised in San Diego, and I had a stint in Washington when I was younger, but that's irrelevant. And then wasn't much of a church kid growing up. We went to church, but not too much. And it wasn't until 2015 that my parents started forcing me to go to a youth group, and I got tricked into going to a summer church camp. I walked in the doors and they said, "Hey man, you coming to CIY?" And that was the name of the church camp. I thought CIY was the name of the youth group. I was like, bro, like I'm already here, And so I was like, yeah, I just said yes. He's like, great, I'll sign you up. So I got signed up for church camp, and it was at the church camp that Jesus grabbed my life, and just like an inexpressible need for a savior, and like what I'm doing right now just ain't working. And so on top of that, there's a lot of like buzz going on around my life, and like, all right, something needs to change. So I gave my life to Christ when I was 16, and then got baptized just a couple weeks later. And then fast forward almost 9 years, almost 10 years. It's I now live in Omaha, and I'm a pastor here. So yeah, man.
So is this your first ministry?
No. Yeah.
Previous to that, you did what?
Yeah, I was a student pastor in San Diego for about 5 years. And so I after I got baptized, the following morning, as every high school student can probably relate to, woke up way too early to finish homework because I just was stuck in the cycle of procrastination. And grabbed my binder out of my backpack to finish the homework. And my parents had gotten me a Bible for like my spiritual birthday, and it was on my nightstand. And so when I was pulling up my binder, dude, the best way I can describe it, I don't know, is the feeling when just somebody's staring at you. Like, see, people just have that supernatural ability. You just know, right? Anyways, and I had that feeling, and I immediately turned and made eye contact with my Bible. And then it was just like all I could see was me baptizing 3 other people. I'll call it a vision. whatever you want to take that as. And I still don't know what that means. Jesus will tell me one day. But the thing that I do know for certain was the deep, unmistakable calling in my life to do ministry as my vocation. And so it was like, I just didn't know. It was crazy, man. And it rattled in my bones, a deep pit in my stomach. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Went to my student pastor at the time, and he helped me get upset up with a few things. And then I pretty much just got raised up as a leader and pastor over my tail end of high school and into my first semester of college. And then you guys know probably the statistics of like student pastors, they turn over,
Yeah,
and so there ended up being a vacancy at my church for one of the student pastor positions, and my pastor came up to me and said, "Hey, I think it's your time." And so I stepped.
And how old are you then?
18.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, dude. I had no business leading a student ministry at 18. And so I did that for 5 years, and God is gracious to me. Led through freaking COVID, bro. Like, what the heck? It's just like one day everything turned off.
There's a whole, not just old man, young man thing, but just the different ways the church responded to COVID.
Dude.
And there was, peaceable ways of doing it. There were hostile ways of doing it. And it was all over the map. And it was very sad that there was so much division in the church of just, how do we handle this thing?
I'm convinced no one did it right.
Well, I would agree with that. In our church, when we went through that, we shut down for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, one of the things that really got to me was I did a funeral, and we had to get a special exemption just to have pallbearers. And I thought, this is just wrong.
Yeah.
You don't treat people like this when they're grieving, when they lost a loved one. And then trying to make hospital visits and all those things as a pastor. Yeah. So I agree with you. It was both in the church and in the government. It was just wrong. Dude. What we did was just wrong.
And I was in San Diego during COVID. And so, like, all right, not to get into politics here, but California did not
they weren't real sensitive to the church.
No, they weren't, man. It was nuts. But yeah, so that was stupid.
So you got through COVID.
Then continued doing student ministry. Our church actually ended up closing. I call it a delayed COVID casualty. We just never bounced back, man.
Yeah.
Like, numbers were down, budget was down, volunteers were down, everything was just down. And we were scratching, clawing, like getting socked in the face just to keep that church open. And then eventually our pastor just said, "Hey guys, I think it's time." And then that closed, and student ministry was over. I was like, "Lord, what are we doing?" I was like, "Is that my ride?"
And you, at this point in time, we can talk about this later, but you had no formal seminary Bible training. So to try to go pursue ministry with only experience, I shouldn't say only, but that's the way the mindset is today.
I had my undergrad in biblical studies from San Diego Christian.
Right.
Yeah, so I was in school while I was a student pastor in San Diego, and then I graduated towards the end of 2020. I graduated at the end of 2021, at December 2021. So, and then our church closed in 2023. So, there's there was some education and then all that, but it was great. Church closed, and I was like, "What the heck, man?" And then didn't know what to do. Sought a whole bunch of wise counsel from people much older, old man like you. Sought the counsel of Jesus, and one thing led to another, and God's voice, God's people, and God's spirit all spoke the same direction, saying, "You're going to Omaha." And so
how did Kurt find you? Kurt Dodd is the pastor of the church that he's working in now. So how'd they find you?
There's a hiring firm called Slingshot, and I was very reluctant because it's a hiring firm. Like, as a pastor, first, I don't want to be the guy trying to sell I'm the best student pastor in town. You need to hire me. I'm what you need to revive your church. No, that's garbage. That makes my skin crawl. And so I was very reluctant. There's a few other hiring firms like that, like Vanderbloom and chemistry staffing and Slingshot, all those. But almost all of the older, wiser counsel that I saw said, "Hey, bro, I know it's kind of feels grimy, but I think you would find exactly what you're looking for if you went on that." And I prayed about it, and I felt some peace, and I just took a deep breath. Okay, like I get like it was the time to present like, "Hey, I'm a decent student pastor," and it just felt gross saying that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe there's
Now,
stuff inside me that I need to get worked out.
so here's Lord willing, if we have more episodes, we can talk about this. But
Yeah.
you know, someone once said, "There's no such thing as a humble young man." And if I'm honest, I can say, well, there's just no such thing as a humble man, because the pride in all of us just runs deep. But you do try at least to say, Lord, I have gifts and abilities that you gave me.
Right.
I don't want to brag about them or act like
That's fair.
I'm the be and end all. But it's not helpful to pretend like you've done nothing with me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a challenge.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that. Yeah, because like on there it was like on the thing it was like, how big was your student ministry? Like, give me the number. How big was your volunteer team? That's what you got to put down on Slingshot. Like, how much over your tenure did your ministry grow? And you're like,
well,
yeah. And you're like, I feel disgusting. And like I had growth. I had a good team. I had a good sized ministry. But like, I don't want to put that. I don't know. Like, hire me. My numbers are better than that guy's. Like,
well, and then again, it's such a. Someone once said, "The numbers aren't everything, but if you get to zero, you're done." Right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those challenging things to say. All things being equal, God, we expect God to bless our labors, and we expect our numbers to grow.
Right.
However, you can also be in a season where John 6:66, right? As a result of this, many of his disciples no longer followed.
Right.
Well, if he'd have filled out an application on that day,
Yeah, bro, no one to hire Jesus.
It's like, well, I just grew the church from 500 to 2. So
yeah,
it's a challenge that you try to grapple through all those things and maintain a clear conscience, and cultivate a humility to say, Lord, I want to be honest, but there are just those seasons of life where it's barren, whether it's in our own souls or in our ministry. God gives us some dry spells.
Yep. Yeah,
so let me ask you this.
Yep.
Because I think my father-in-law, who pastored for a long, long time and then was a seminary professor at 2 different places. And in his mind, he said, one of the biggest mistakes young men make as they enter the ministry is they marry poorly. And I can say my wife and I will be married 42 years in October. I married well. And she has made significant difference in my ability to minister and survive the ministry. So you've got a young wife, been married, what?
3 years?
3 years. So how does she view all this?
Yeah, how does she stack up?
Well, just how is she? I told her, actually, I saw her on Sunday and I said, I think one of the hardest jobs in the world is being a pastor's wife.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, man. It's I mean, God blessed me, man. Like, my wife is beautiful. She is humble. She is a servant, and like, she supports me. And even though it's so hard for her, we moved from San Diego to Omaha. No family, no friends, no nothing, man. Like, right now, we're kind of in a barren land for like relationally and emotionally. Like, there's not a lot of people in this church that are our age, and so it's like she's having a hard time, but she is like taking it on the chin and saying, Jesus led us here. I'm going to support my husband. And like, oh my gosh, I couldn't ask for a better wife. And not only that, like, sometimes when I forget it, we'll go out to lunch with like Byron or Kurt. Those are pastors at this church. And they'll always let me know afterwards, you married up. You know that? Every time.
Well,
yes,
good.
Sir.
That's good. Let me give you some old man advice.
Yes, please.
That you will not appreciate. No, I'm serious, because I'm 68. I'll be 69 in a couple months. Was in the pastorate for 41 years and still don't fully understand where that line is. But every young guy that I meet, I try to tell him this. if you're in the ministry, you will ask your wife and your family as the days go by to make sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
But beg God for the wisdom and the grace not to sacrifice your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't always know what that line is.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
okay, honey, turn the other cheek. Okay, honey, take your,
Right.
and that, okay, where do you say, okay, I've asked you to do enough.
Right. Yeah.
And so pray for that wisdom all along the way.
Dude, I know. There have been times where it's like, what am I doing here? Like, it's just like when I've only been here for close to 2 years, but there have certainly been times like where there's just like 3 bad weeks in a row and they just progressively get worse. I'm like, what am I doing here, bro? Like, I'm robbing her of her family and her friends and relationships. And so I've thought about that, and it's always a battle. I'm not saying I'm going anywhere because my wife and I are both confident Jesus has planted us here for a very specific reason. But like, yeah, bro, it's a battle. It's always a battle.
So for what it's worth,
Yeah.
and this is part of the whole old man, young man thing, right? Yeah. I got saved when I was 22 years old from a horrific background. And I was raised a Roman Catholic. So right after I got saved, I went back to the Catholic Church because that's kind of like all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And then as the months went by, I started to branch out to see what else was in the Omaha area. Because after I got saved, before I got saved, all my friends, we were just partying, for lack of a better term.
Let's go.
And then I got saved, and so I lost all my friends. So it's like, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I got to go see what else is out here in the Christian community. Make a long story short, after a couple of years in trying to make the rounds in the Omaha area and church life, I got this kind of disillusioned and discouraged. So I thought, well, I don't know. And then a friend said, hey, I've got this jail ministry with juveniles teaching Bible study, and I'm going to be moving away. Can you take over for me? So I started doing that. And then I started a Bible study at my home on Thursday night. So I was going to the jail 2 days a week, doing my own thing on Thursday nights. And so I quit going to church because church. Right. And then I owned my own home at the time, 3-bedroom house. So at any one point in time, I'd have between 1 and 6 roommates. And one of them, believe it or not, attended this church. This was back in 1981.
Golly, man.
All right. So David would ask me to go to church every Sunday. I go, I've been there, done that. I'm done with church. I'm going to be a Christian and minister to people. So finally one day he said, hey, I talked to the pastor there and he's willing just to have lunch just so we can talk. I said, all right, I'll have lunch with the guy. So I had lunch with him, and I ended up attending Westside in 81. The guy who I had lunch with ended up being my father-in-law.
Yeah, bro. Isn't that nuts?
So I preached my first sermon in 82. Mel and I got married in 83, and then Westside sent us out to plant a church in 84. So I had no formal training, and I had a pretty good relationship with my father-in-law. But back in those days, having no formal training and trying to plant a church, it was really, really, really hard. And I'd have paid a lot of money if I could have had an older guy come alongside to say, hey, let me warn you off of this and let me point you in that direction. Yeah. So for whatever it's worth, as time goes by, as long as we're in the same geographical location, I don't have much of a brain left to pick, but you can pick it for all it's worth. And I just, I want you guys to know, all of you guys to know who's on staff here. I'm part-time at Westside, and I'm very thankful to be here. My wife and I kind of came back home. It's where she grew up and where we got married and yada, yada. But I pray for you guys every day and just pray God helps us have a genuinely Christ-centered, useful ministry in the Omaha area. And yet at the same time, we can talk about this as God gives us the time and the opportunity together is what does Christ-centered ministry even look like in 2025? With dealing with, I filled in and helped you guys out on a couple of Sundays with the youth group.
Yep. I appreciate that, man.
And I realized that I'm sitting at a table with 7th graders.
Yeah.
And I'm old enough to be their almost great grandpa. And I'm thinking, this is hard for me. These are, 15-year-old and 13, however old they were. I'm like, so it's a challenge.
Yep.
And that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, is because having done this for a long time, I'm confident that I still don't have very many answers. The ones I have, I think, are good. But I realize there's still a lot of answers I don't have.
I got all the answers, so maybe you can.
Well, all right,
Yeah.
and maybe God will,
I'm just kidding.
hold, when is it Joshua who prayed, have the sun stand still? Maybe
Yeah.
God is going to just stop the universe so you can teach me.
Yeah.
Have Superman running around, trains.
Yeah. I'm Superman.
So there you go. No, but we'll have a good time. I'm looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you and Chris better. Chris is the other youth pastor here, and which is interesting in itself that you guys are a team.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about that in another episode. But anything you want to finish up with today?
Bro, why don't you end us off by telling your testimony? Because you told it to me yesterday, and I was baffled.
Well, like I said, I was raised in a Roman Catholic home, and in the strange providence of God, I went to Catholic grade school, and I was a straight A student on the math team, and I went to the South Omaha Boys Club and learned how to wrestle there. And so because of that, I had two older brothers. I wanted to go to a public high school that had one of the best high school wrestling teams in the metro. And it broke my mom's heart because I was the third born, first of her sons, not to go to a Catholic high school.
Jeez.
And in the crazy providence of God, though, learning how to wrestle saved my life.
Yeah.
Because after high school, I just I went on just a crazy trip of doing a lot of bad, wicked, sinful things. And on Christmas Eve, 1978, I got in a fight in a bar, and guns were pulled. But being able to wrestle saved my life that day. And I went home, and you're shaken because 1978 was just like the worst year in my life, but it ended as the best year of my life because I almost died multiple times: car wrecks, drug overdoses, motorcycle wrecks, gang fights, bar room brawls. But I ended up getting saved by the end of the year. So it was the worst time and the best time. But what's funny is that I was working for the UP Railroad, and there were a handful of us
Is that Union Pacific?
Yes.
Is that what that? Okay.
Yeah. A handful of us whose lives were just a mess. Guys were going through divorces and DUIs and just like me. In fact, I came to work one day after about a 3-day bender, and I was parking my motorcycle, and I leaned it over, and this guy pulls up, and he looked at me and he goes, "Louie, your temple, man, look at it. It's crumbling." And we were both unconverted. Like, he just saw my body, and I was strung out for 3 days, and he could look at you, man. What are you doing to yourself? So that's the kind of mess I was in.
Yeah, man.
Even when an unconverted person can look at you and say, "Man, you're in bad shape." So after the Monday after Christmas Eve, I went to work, and a guy had gone to a church in Council Bluffs and said, "Hey, the preacher said, if you ever want to change your life, you got to trust Jesus." And that was the extent of the gospel that I knew. Being raised Roman Catholic, I knew the Jesus story, Christmas, Easter, that kind of stuff. I didn't know what it meant to truly repent and truly believe and, yield to the person and work of Christ. So I knelt down in my front room, like I said, on my own home at the time. My best friend's little sister was living in my basement because her fiance had gotten killed earlier that year.
Jeez.
So I prayed a prayer, and I just said, "God, I know that if things don't change, I'm going to die. And I know that if I die, I'm going to hell. So if you will change my life, I'll do whatever you want me to do." And he did. Like overnight, I was done. That was the last time I was drunk and last time I did drugs, and I was just done. So that was, in the winter. When springtime rolled around, Nancy moved out because I wasn't fun anymore. And all my friends left. So they would say things like, "What happened to you? What happened to you?" And I didn't know the gospel. I knew that I prayed a prayer and God heard me.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that Jesus had something to do with all that, but I would just tell people, I prayed a prayer and I think God heard me. And like, "What are you talking about?" That's
what I know, man.
I got a Bible. I kept reading my Bible. So after Nancy moved out and all my friends were gone, I would go to work, come home, read my Bible. Sundays, go to church. Middle of the week, rest of the week, go to work, come home, read my Bible. That went on for months. And then finally I said, you know what? I got no friends. I don't know what I'm going to do. I love music. I like all kinds of music. I'm going to take piano lessons.
Do you play any instruments?
No, not now.
Okay.
I married somebody who did. But I thought, I got time. I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out how to play the piano. So in those days, I got out the yellow pages. It's called the phone book.
Hey, bro, I had one of those as like a playbook when I was 5. Like my parents gave it to me and like, play with this. Yeah. And I'd like flip through the pages and
so I went under, piano lessons and made a few phone calls. And finally this gal on the other end said, well, I've got a spot open on Thursdays at 4:00. I said, I'll be there. So I show up. My hair's not quite as long as yours.
No, it's not gray yet either.
But my beard was fuller and I didn't own a car. All I had was a motorcycle. So I had a, jean jacket, the whole look, right? And I come walking in and she's in her mid 40s, about 5'2". Mm-hmm. And when she saw me, it was like, oh my, right? So we go into this little studio and I sit down at the piano and she said, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? I said, no, you can ask me anything you want. She goes, how old are you? I said, 22. Have you ever had lessons before? I said, no. And she said, well, why do you want to start now? I said, well, I prayed this prayer and I think God heard me and it changed my life and I lost all my friends. So I figured, I'll try to learn how to play the piano. and she says, well, you got saved. I didn't know what that meant. Yeah. Okay. She reaches in her purse, pulls out her Bible, and she starts taking me through verses in the Romans and things like that.
That's cool.
That's what happened to me. I got saved. And then, everything, as soon as it, you began to see it, everything just kind of clicked. And so,
right. The divine appointment.
And then the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
So here we are today.
Yeah, man.
Doing old man, young man.
Heck yeah.
So God's been very kind to, here's what's amazing to me, right? I grew up in South Omaha, ran the streets, got in a bunch of trouble. In fact, one night I got arrested and my dad was working the midnight shift and I call home. It was about, 1:00 in the morning. And I said, Mom, guess where I am? She goes, I suppose jail. I said, well, that's where I am. And she said, well, you're just going to have to wait till your father comes home. And she hung up on me.
That's crazy, bro.
So I had to spend the night in jail.
How old are you?
17.
Oh, yeah. Still living at home?
Still living at home.
Good. Well, so, yeah. Not for long, I take it, huh?
You know what? I lived at home technically, but basically it was a pit stop.
Yeah.
Until I bought my own house when I was 21.
Bro, that's something we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Bro, I feel like I'm never going to buy a house ever in my life.
So let me tell you the difference. This is, I used to think you guys were lazy.
No, I just broke.
Well, I realized this is insane. So in 1977, I bought my first house.
Bro, still got it? Can I have it?
Well, if I had it, I would think about giving it to you.
Thanks, man.
But think about this, right? In 1977, I was making about $14 an hour.
That's pretty good for 1977.
In 1977?
Yeah.
Okay. My house payment. Guess how much my house payment was? 3-bedroom, fireplace.
Oh, it's going to be something stupid. Like what? Like $650?
It was $343 a month.
Oh my gosh, bro.
So gas was about, $1.25 a gallon or whatever it was back in those days. And then Jimmy Carter hit, it was some tough times. But when I think about,
you're stressing me out, man.
The house that I bought in 1977 for $36,000 is probably,
bro, $36,000.
Yeah, it's probably $200,000 today,
at least.
And so
what the heck?
The wages that I was making compared to the house I bought was probably like 2 or 3 to 1. Now it's probably 8 or 10 to 1. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how can anybody afford that now? Thankfully, by the grace of God, he's been once again kind to me. I was able to, just do a lot of things. And then I got, saved and without an education, planted a church, pastored a 2 churches over a 41-year period. I preached the gospel in 6 different countries, helped start a seminary, helped start an orphanage. And I'm just kind of like blown away where, man, following Jesus is just an amazing endeavor.
Mhm.
And you never know where it leads or what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, we can say it's all good.
Mhm.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And I want to be able just to serve the Lord till the day I die. I hope and I pray I can keep my mental faculties and
Yeah.
and I don't have any sense of, retirement. It's just the kingdom work.
Yep.
It needs to get done.
Right.
It's always been true where the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. So I want to be an encouragement to you and Chris and anybody else I can be. I want to learn from you guys and be better equipped to serve God in this generation.
Yep.
And hopefully together we can do that. Little iron sharpening iron.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
All right. Anything else for today? Are we good for today?
No, I'm good. I'm just gonna go cry that I'll never be able to buy a house for $36,000.
Well, not for 36,000, but you never know.
Hey, you never know.
You buy lotto tickets, that might help.
Hey, like probably once a year, I'll just be like, hey, I'll get a scratcher. I've won like $20 off it, but and then I use that $20 to go buy more.
There you go.
And then I never win anything.
I understand.
Don't gamble.
I understand. Hey, well, thanks for stopping by to check us out. And Lord willing, we'll be putting up episodes probably at least once a week. You never know. But help us spread the word. We're going to be on Facebook and X and YouTube. And if you guys can subscribe and like and follow and all those internet things that we have to do to build this ministry, we would greatly appreciate that.
Yep.
So I'm the old man, Lou.
Gosh, messed that one up. That would have been so clean. I'm the young man, Kendall.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming in.